Hey guys, it's Ryan Lyon here at Lion DAO, and we're making a quick video today following a couple of exciting releases of additional utility for the raw token, the DAO governance token. Those two things are firstly, Eris Protocol have developed ampROAR, which is a liquid staking derivative of our raw token, and secondly, the guys over at Ginkou, a money market on the Migloo White Whale chain, have actually listed ampROAR as a collateral asset that you can use on their money market to deposit and then borrow USDC against. So I'll be in this video, I'll just be doing a quick walkthrough of what these things are, how they work, and a bit of a tutorial for anyone who's new to these kind of concepts. So first and foremost, we have the ampROAR liquid staking derivative brought to you by Eris. Eris Protocol, or erisprotocol.com, are a liquid staking token provider on Cosmos, and if we just navigate to this menu real quick, you can see they're across multiple chains on Cosmos. I think they're possibly the second largest liquid staking derivative provider after Stride. Um, so really exciting that those guys have listed raw. If you're not sure what a liquid staking derivative is, so if you just hop over to Lion DAO here, so in Lion DAO you can stake your tokens, and when you stake your tokens, you receive rewards. We have a daily daily staking rewards that are delivered to raw stakers in the DAO. And then you can also see here that there's also a whole bunch of other tokens that are getting airdropped to raw stakers. And essentially what a liquid staking derivative allows you to do is it allows you to essentially have the benefits of the staking rewards from staking your token, but then also have the flexibility to utilize your token elsewhere as collateral or to provide liquidity. Whereas when you're just plain staking, you don't have that. You don't have that luxury. So essentially, what Eris do is you deposit. So 22 billion raw so far has been locked into their vault. They stake that, and then they harvest the rewards every day. So you can see here they're getting over 3 million raw per day from that 22 billion that's staked, and they put that into their vault so that the exchange rate of the liquid staking derivative, in this case ampROAR, to raw increases over time. So if I staked here today, I would get the equivalent exchange rate of 1.0028, and then as they harvest more raw tokens into the vault, this exchange rate will continue to increase, and then I can come back at some point in the future and unstake my ampROAR and get a larger amount of raw back than I initially deposited. So that's how it works. For the time being, Eris are only compounding the raw tokens. So as I said, there's a whole bunch of tokens that have been airdropped and distributed to raw stakers. Those won't be compounded at this point in time, and we will if there's sufficient liquidity for some of these tokens, Eris may start to compound other tokens into more raw, which would increase the APY. But for the time being, they're just being held in the Eris contract until there's enough liquidity to start to move those into more raw tokens to increase the APY. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways to get hold of ampROAR. When you come to erisprotocol.com, We're a little bit hidden at this point in time. I'll have to get onto the developers at Eris to make sure we're a bit more visible. But when you come to Eris, if you go to their Amplify page here, and it'll default to the Lunar Amplifier. If you go to, you can just hover over the Lunar sign here. You can switch to any of the other tokens that they do liquid staking tokens for, and we just select raw here, and it'll take us to the raw amplifier, and obviously put the link to the raw amplifier in the description of this video. So to stake some raw for ampROAR, simply go here to stake. In this example, I'm gonna do 1 million raw. As you can see, because of that exchange rate, I get slightly less than 1 million ampROAR, although I will be able to convert that ampROAR back to 1 million raw, and as I say, over time, the amount of raw that I'll be able to convert it back for will increase. So I'm just going to hit stake here. I'm going to approve the transaction. And then you see I've already got a little bit of ampROAR over here. This should increase once this transaction is processed. And there you go. Now I've got just over 2 million ampROAR. And if I go to unstake, you can see similar. If I wanted to unstake 1 million, 1 million ampROAR, I'd get slightly more than 1 million raw back because of that exchange rate. And if you do this, what you call slow unbonding, and you unstake, that's going to be a 7-day unbonding time, because we have a 7-day unlock period on the DAO, which is a lot less than most chains. So most Cosmos chains will have typically between 14 and 28 days on staking period. So sometimes people don't like to slow unbond, and they'd rather swap on a DEX and take a haircut, but it's much more palatable to have a 7-day unlock than, say, a 14 to 28 day unlock. Now, the other way that you can get hold of ampROAR is we've seeded a ampROAR raw liquidity pool. As you can see, there's 40k of liquidity in this pool, and if you're planning on trying to grab some ampROAR, you may want to always look at the exchange rate between on a DEX versus staking directly. So you can see here that actually, in the case of using 1 million as an example, in this example, because there's been a slight depeg, so someone here sold a bunch of ampROAR, and switched it back to plain raw. They created a depeg against the redeemable value, and therefore there's an opportunity here where you can actually, instead of swapping, instead of staking direct on Eris, you can swap and get a slightly better rate. So I would say this for all liquid staking derivatives. If you're ever thinking about getting hold of a liquid staking derivative, you may often get a better rate by swapping into liquidity rather than staking directly on a liquid staking derivative provider's website. But it depends on the size. So I think if we were to scale this up, so we're at 1 million, do 100, if do 10 million, 100 million, I think we should probably still get a favorable swap at this rate, but yeah, we're still getting a favorable swap at 100 million. So I've got 800 million raw in my wallet. I'm probably want to have a decent amount so that I can do a good example on Ginkou. So if I do 250 million, you see I'm still getting a slightly favorable swap rate there. So I'm getting more ampROAR than I'm putting in raw, and typically you should get less. So if we were to put 250 million in here, so you would get 249 million ampROAR, and here I would be getting 250. So I'm getting a slightly better rate. But then, if I was to extend that example and put 2.5 billion, you see there all of a sudden the rate becomes unfavorable. So it depends on the size when you're trading into liquidity as to whether you're going to get a favorable swap rate or not. Doesn't seem to want me to make that swap. Let's see if we can refresh and try again. Okay, CoinHole's giving us an unknown error. I think we're going to have to go direct to the White Whale DEX to trade this, because the liquidity is on White Whale. Okay. So we roll for ampROAR. I'm going to do 250 million. Okay, and we're still getting a favorable swap rate there. Okay, so let's never do a live demonstration. Let's try a smaller amount. Okay, that's working. We're doing 100 million. We've got 101 million. ampROAR back. I'll do another 100. Okay, lovely. So I've now got 203 million ampROAR. So that's oh, the other thing to mention on the raw amplifier is obviously this means that Eris have got 22 billion raw voting rights on the DAO, and you can see that they are voting on the DAO. There's their wallet there that's voted on this recent governance proposal. So Eris also do this thing called AMP governance, right? So you can lock your ampROAR for a period of time, and then that gives you voting power over how the raw in the Eris Vault votes on governance proposals. What it typically does is give you a much larger say in governance than you would typically get. So, so as we said, there's 22 billion raw in the vault. See, I've locked 50 million raws worth of ampROAR for. I've locked it for a year, and that's given me this amount of voting power, 265 million voting power. You see that the total voting power is 607 million. So just by locking this 50 million ampROAR for 1 year and getting this voting power has given me, I've got about 40% of the voting power of 22 billion raw. So you can really, if you're really interested in governance, you want to have a bigger say in governance, you can come here, you can lock, I mean, we can, so you get some ampROAR, and you can lock it in here. So we'll just do an example. We'll lock 1,000,000 ampROAR. So I'm just increasing the amount that I've already locked, and I'll get another 6 million. So current versus new. I'll get an additional 6 million voting power. And then the other thing that you can do here is, I mean, I've already locked, but you can extend the lock time. So I'm currently locked until 21st of October 2024. And it's basically saying if I increase, you see my current power is 271. If I wanted to increase that to say January 2025, I'd get another like 20% worth of voting power. And you can you don't have to lock for a year. You can lock from any time from I think it's might be 2 weeks to 2 years. So depending on how bullish you are on a token and how long you want to hold it for and how interested you are in governance, you can utilize this function to basically leverage your governance power. I think that'd be a really good idea for some of the really active people in the DAO who want to have a bigger say. So that's AMP governance. And the only downfall of AMP governance is that the vault can only vote one way. So with Eris's, when they stake with their L1 assets, where their tokens are staked to a whole of different validators, they can choose to vote like different ways. So they could vote like 50% yes, 30% no, 20% abstain or something, and they could kind of split the votes. Whereas with Lion DAO, because it's all staked in one wallet, in their vault wallet, they can only vote one way. So it's a yes, it's a no, it's an all-in vote. So whatever the majority of people vote, that's the way that they'll vote in AMP governance. So that's all about ampROAR. And then the next thing that we said we were going to do is we were going to move it over to Ginkou, which is a money market on the Migaloo chain. So because it's on Migaloo chain, I'm going to need to move. The first thing I'm going to need to do is move my ampROAR over to the Migaloo chain. So to do that, I'm going to use TFM, and I'm using tfm.com/bridge. I find this super easy to just move assets from one chain to another. Probably use this almost every day. So shout out to the TFM guys. There's my ampROAR. So I'm just going to send it all over. I've got to connect my wallet for Migaloo. That's no problem. Okay. So I'm going to hit transfer here. Confirm. Pay a small fee. And it's usually really quick to move over. I hope I've got some whale on Migaloo for fees. Ooh, only a little bit. Hopefully it'll be okay. There we go. That's transferred over. So now I'm going to open up Ginkou. So Ginkou.io. It's a new money market launched on Migaloo chain, White Whale chain, and you see, great start for them. They've already got over $500,000 locked into the protocol in TVL. And the way I describe this, I'm doing this for the first time, by the way. I'm doing this live. I've not used Ginkou before, so we'll have to navigate it together. But from what I've seen, it's very similar. It reminds me of Anchor Protocol from the Terra V1 days. But it's not using. Obviously, it's using USDC. It's using native noble USDC. So it's not, the quote-unquote Ponzinomics of Anchor Protocol. What it's doing is you can deposit, if you go to the dashboard, You can deposit collateral. You can borrow against that collateral. And then if you do borrow, you're charged an interest rate. And then the interest rate goes to depositors. So you can see they've got $92,000 deposit of borrow against $421,000 of collateral, and they've got $110,000 deposited. And I'm not sure where you see the interest rates. Okay. But anyway, so here we go. Interest rate. Yeah, so if you deposit USDC into this protocol, you're getting 12.5% APY currently. As you can see, that's fluctuating based on the amount that people are borrowing. And to borrow, okay, very expensive to borrow. 68%, so quite high borrowing costs. And that's because there's, if you go back to the dashboard, there's a really high deposit to borrow ratio. So the more that's deposited here, the cheaper borrowing becomes, and then the more that's borrowed, the better the earn APY. So it's like Anchor, but it's done on sustainable yields. It's done on interest rates. It's not done on a fixed interest rate like there was on Anchor. It's variable. So anyway, well, let's so we go to my page, and to borrow against my ampROAR, you see, see, Ginkou have had to put a special info here because we've got too many zeros in front of the token. And I guess the other thing to point out is to kick off, they've only given ampROAR a max LTV of 20%. So that means if you deposit $1,000, you can only borrow $200 against that. And that's because obviously the raw token, fairly low market cap, fairly low liquidity, price could be potentially manipulated by people if they really wanted to. So they start at a low LTV to manage risk, and then over time, hopefully, we'll see this LTV go up as our liquidity increases. So this is kind of, I guess it's a bit of a trial. But what that does mean is you need to be really careful when you are borrowing, because if the price moves significantly, you could get liquidated. So I'm going to provide, there's my ampROAR, it's come through onto Migaloo. So I'm going to provide the 200 million raw, and that's going to give me a $58. Oh gosh, I'm TX fees. I might have to just swap real quick. Some extra. Oh gosh, the fees are quite high. Okay, so let's go back to that. So we're going to provide. Gosh, white whale, these fees have gone up a lot. These fees have gone up a lot. But I think that's an intentional thing from the Migaloo chain. They want their transaction fees to be more meaningful. Okay, so I've now provided $291 of collateral. I guess I can borrow against this. So okay. borrow $30. Okay. I might have to use that $30 to buy some whale because I'm going to be quickly out at this rate. Okay, there we go. So now, okay, there we go. So now I've borrowed. So borrowed. There we go. Borrowed $30. I'm about 10% LTV. And then I guess I can do whatever I like with this $30. So I guess the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and buy some more whale because I'm about to run out of fees. So let's just buy. Oh, there we go. That gets me plenty. Okay, cool. And then, I mean, I don't think this works because the borrow APY is higher than the earn APY. But just for example purposes, I could put $20 into the Ginkou bank. There we go. And so I presume that is going to be, I don't know how quick Anki used to go up by the second, but okay. So I guess we can come back to that at a later date, and that should be earning 12%. So that's good. What else have we got here? So liquidation queue. So here we go. Oh, some people have got some bids in. Well, not much, but you can bid to liquidate some raw. So if as we said, if the price falls and people have degen borrowed against their raw, they might get liquidated. So so this is very similar to Orca on Kajira, which was very, very popular in Terra V1 and still is on the Kajira chain. I think Catapult on Terra also have a similar function. So this sort of bidding on liquidations seems to be a popular thing now. So let's just put in, we'll buy $5 worth at a 30% premium. Let's put it at 29% premium just so we can. Okay. Place my bid. Lovely. And there's my liquidation bid, and you could also bid on other things. So we could bid on some amp whale liquidations or whatever. Pending liquidations. Okay. Oh, that's me. Okay, seems like I might be the most degen. How does this work? I'm not sure exactly how this works. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, so you might be a UI thing here where it needs to be the UI to be improved a little bit so it shows maybe the ones that are most likely to be liquidated, but you can basically, it looks like you can click through here everyone's borrow position, and so this would help you determine whether someone was close to liquidation, whether you should bid on liquidations, like this guy here. Oh, and the the lion. Keep seeing all these degen lion DAO people. But here you see someone's lent someone's deposited 18,000 Luna or Bone Luna. If they're if Luna price of Luna starts to come down and they've borrowed $3,700, let's say it comes down, then they're at risk of liquidation. So at that point you might want to bid on liquidations. And I guess I'd a shout out to Ginkou here. I'm sure they're already working on it. Let's be able to order these in terms of who's been the most degen, who's the closest percentage to liquidation, because that's going to help them keep this protocol solvent. So obviously the important thing is that when a liquidation happens, that there's someone there to bid for it, so that it keeps the protocol solvent. So that's why you have these LTVs, right? Is because you can borrow up to 60%, but you can liquidate at a 30% premium. So if the price is shooting down quickly, they need to be able to liquidate the assets for USDC to pay back the depositors. So the depositors have put their USDC at risk, and people are borrowing it against it using collateral. They're borrowing that USDC that's been deposited. So it's important that they're able to withdraw their USDC if they want to, and that it's not lost to bad debt, basically. So I think that's pretty much a whistle. There we go. That's increased. So you see our expected interest now. Excellent. APR is not great there. It's very expensive to borrow, but that's fine. These are all the assets. Oh, that's the liquidation queues. This is just a link through to Mint. And we're not listed here, so Ginkou, I'm going to ask you to do that. Okay, you can swap for assets there. And I presume this is the whale price chart. Okay. I mean, I think we've pretty much done everything we can do on Ginkou there. I guess I've shown an example of like borrowing and depositing. I mean, that's not a good example. You would borrow and then do something. So I might borrow, and then I might swap half to whale and provide LP. I presume there's some incentives on this LP, or something along those lines. Yeah, so there's like 36% APR on that pool. So I might borrow, swap half to whale, or go and do whatever you want with it. You can do whatever. You can move it cross chain. You can do whatever. So, so we've sent ampROAR over. We've deposited it. We've borrowed against it. We've then popped some into earn. We've popped some into the liquidity pools. We did a swap on white whale. So there you go. Using the power of RAW to borrow a stable coin for the first time, which is pretty fun. When we created the DAO, we didn't anticipate having liquid staking derivatives and being listed on money markets. So a huge shout out to Eris Protocol and to Ginkou for making this happen. It's really fun, and it brings more utility to the raw token, which is just great. I mean, it's just an experiment to see how much we can do with Enterprise Protocol and the DAO. And for those of you who haven't seen, we Our treasury is now, I think, around about $130,000 of non-native token. So that's just growing and growing. And so there is some tangible value behind the token. So it's just been an absolutely wild ride. So thank you for everyone who's been involved. I hope you found this longer than expected video useful. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.